Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in for another show. Welcome to all of our members, subscribers, and everyone viewing from all across the world. If you're new to my channel, I have these live streams to open the space up for the community participation and also ask any questions or comments. That's usually opened after I speak about the main things that I wanted to share with you in this live stream. This live stream, we're going to be talking about a couple of things. Firstly, before I get into tonight's live stream, I posted a video earlier on that you can go ahead and watch after this live stream for the armed wing of Hamas releasing the 4 Israeli soldiers, the IDF captives, prisoners of war, call them what you want, just not hostages, or civilians. Okay, these were working in a surveillance unit in the Gaza division in the Israeli army. Yet some of these lying hypocrites in mainstream media are saying 4 hostages, 4 female hostages. What do you mean hostages? They were part of the Gaza division. Anyway, Hamas, Al-Qassam Brigades, they released this video. Women happy. Thank you, Al-Qassam, for protecting us from the IDF strikes. Thank you for the food, for the clothes, for the treatment, right? Some of them gained weight. They look happy and pampered. On the other hand, we had 200 Palestinians being released. 200 Palestinians. Some of them went to the West Bank, some of them to Egypt, some of them to the Gaza Strip. Over 120 of which have the life sentence in Israel. Those who went to Egypt, some of them are going to remain in Egypt, some of them are going to go to third-party countries. Israel insisted on deporting them, basically. They don't want them in occupied territories, but they had their agreement, basically. So any of these prisoners who would be sent to another country, they would do so after agreeing. So if you don't agree, you don't sign, and you decide to remain in prison. But clearly there has been an agreement because it appeared to be the only way out when it comes to these heavy prisoners, when it comes to Israel, and that they had to go to other countries too. And there was celebration still. So despite Israel warning families of the Palestinians who were released from they warned them, don't celebrate, right? The apartheid entity of terror doesn't want people to celebrate. The Orwellian state doesn't want you to laugh. Right? No, you still had people enjoying and celebrating in the West Bank and in Egypt too, and in Gaza as well. In Gaza, they were welcomed like heroes in Gaza. The comparison, I mean, really, those Israelis in Gaza, they were treated with, such respect up until the last second. The Palestinian resistance showed how moral they are, how much they stick to their faith, honor, everything. They taught the whole world lessons. And we saw scenes from Gaza, scenes of heroism, scenes of victory, and scenes of humiliation for Israel and every single one that supports Israel. Whether it's governments or, this mainstream media garbage, it debunked everything. Palestinians were showing scenes of victory from Gaza today, and people were so frustrated in Israel. I'm telling you, they didn't know how to spin it. They were finding it difficult to spin things today in the media. It's like, how are we going to do this now? Our hostages, they look amazing. They're saying, Assalamu alaikum and thank you, Al-Qassam. No one's forcing them to say anything, right? Free. And then they went back happy. Their families were happy to see them when Hamas was releasing them, right? Oh, everything is collapsing on this genocide pariah state. Everything is collapsing, I'm telling you. So these were scenes of victory. You can go ahead and watch that video. It's about 2.5-minute video. We had a bit of trouble by posting the videos in the temporary ceasefire before, and, hopefully YouTube, will be kind and generous enough to keep these videos. Nothing offensive, really, just normal videos. Anyway, then we had the well, there was a lot of information published yesterday. It was a program published on Al Jazeera in Arabic about Al-Qassam brigades. That's something I wanted to talk to you about. But before I get into that, and by the way, this I'm going to be talking about him. This is MahmoodOD. This is the commander-in-chief of Al-Qassam brigades. This is the man who ordered Al-Aqsa flood to begin. He was seen in the video yesterday, giving orders, walking, not on a wheelchair or anything. Israel said they killed him, by the way. Do you know that? Israel said they killed him many times. I'm going to be speaking about him. Before I speak about him, I wanted to give you a bit of information about some of the images that we saw today. Some of the images that came from Gaza. One of these images is, well, the image of the Palestinian fighters with, first, this is one of them. Look at that. They're standing here with the Palestinian flag in a place called Sahat Palestine, right? Palestine Square. They chose this deliberately. They were sending many messages to Israel. Here they have images of every war criminal that they've beaten during this war. And they also had, and I'll show you another image, an image of all of the divisions that they humiliated here. They chose this place specifically because they send messages to Israel with the places that they choose. Previously, the Sahat Saraya was called in Gaza, a place that Israel invaded, and they were signaling that we want to occupy Gaza through this. Today in Sahat, Palestine, it's one of the first areas that Israel also invaded during this genocide, near one of the main municipality centers, and also very close to Al-Umri Mosque that Israel destroyed, a very historical mosque. The Palestinian resistance decided to show presence there, also to send a message to Israel that we're here to stay, and don't think that you came here to occupy Gaza. No, that's not going to happen. Then we have this image here. Bear with me a second. Let me try and see if I have another closer one. Okay, here we are. This image that was released today shows the 4 Israeli female soldiers who were taken into the captivity of Hamas, the prisoners of war, who worked in the Gaza division as surveillance in Gaza, right? Firstly, many messages in this image in Arabic and in Hebrew. Here, the Palestinian fighters of freedom will always be the victorious, or the victors. Al-Aqsa flood, revolution against Zionist injustice and criminality. Gaza is the grave of criminal Zionism. Palestine, the victory of the oppressed versus the Nazi Zionism. Perfect messages. Then we have something in Hebrew here called Hatzionut lo tenatzeach. Zionism won't win. And behind Zionism won't win, they have a couple of logos. What are these logos for exactly? These logos are signs of the Gaza division, the paratroopers division, the 8,200 unit, the Shabak, and there were also a couple of signs on the side saying that, well, all of you took a beating, right? All of you took a beating. The Shabak, the army, but those divisions specifically, they chose them deliberately because they've had intense beatings in this genocide. Now, when it comes to something very significant in this image, it was the weapon that was carried by the Palestinian resistance. They were carrying this tavor here. This Tabor was taken from an elite unit in Israel on the 7th of October. Israeli media is saying this is a massive humiliation for our army. These images. The Israeli prisoners of war in good health with the video thanking the resistance, happy, gift bags, they taught them Arabic. And then the elite fighters of the Palestinian resistance here with weapons that they obtained from the army of terror. And then they've had this table. What does this table signal exactly? That you won't get anything unless you sit down and talk. You won't get anything unless you sit down and talk. Don't think that by war you can achieve your objectives, you murderous criminal terrorists. You need to sit down with us and talk, and only then will you see your prisoners of war. But without that, you can forget about it. You need to sit down and talk. Many messages being sent by the Palestinian resistance today. Another thing that I wanted to talk to you about when it comes to the messages that were being sent by the Palestinian resistance today is the fact that one of the persons, well, the main person who sat down, specifically this person right here, who sat down and signed, so they had this signature ceremony. This is the media staff of Al-Qassam brigades, saying Al-I'lam Al-Askari, the military media with the triangle here. Cinematography, really, high-level cinematography. And these are the Red Cross representatives. This is a top figure in Al-Qassam brigades. And this man made a big effort to hide everything to do with his identity, conceal it. Gloves, thick gloves, a layer under the mask, because Israel has high-level, detection capabilities and technology. This is, again, another sign to Israel and the whole world. 2 Palestinian flags, Al-Aqsa here, right? Signaling Al-Aqsa flood too, and the symbolism of Al-Aqsa. And you sit down and talk with us. You don't, don't think you can go ahead and kill and slaughter people and get what you want. Very strong messages coming from the Palestinian resistance today, and the significant numbers. Guys, you know how many people were there from the Palestinian resistance today? Times the numbers that were released, that we saw on the... Like, let me just show you this video as an example. This is just one video from the convoy that we saw today. Let's have a look.
هيا الله أسود الانتصار. هيا الله هيا الله هيا الله بيكم. هيا الله بيكم. هيا الله هيا الله هيا الله هيا الله هيا الله الشباب. هيا الله المغاوير. هيا الله الرجال. 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 هيا الله رجال الرجال. هيا الله أسود غزة. هيا الله أسود العز. هيا الله الأسود. هيا الله المغاوير. هيا الله الأسود. هيا الله الشباب. والله غزة بخير. والله غزة بخير. ما شاء الله ما شاء الله ما شاء الله. هيا الله الشباب. هيا الله 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 الشباب. هيا الله الشباب. هيا الله الشباب.
So as you can see, and this continued, by the way, we have like 30 seconds more of that. A massive convoy for the Palestinian resistance, again, several times bigger than the one we saw in the last round. The quantity, the numbers, everything. And the fact that today we saw two of the resistance movements in Gaza being present. One of them was Al-Qassam Brigades, and the other movement is Saray al-Quds. Al-Quds Brigades, the armed wing of the PIJ. They're wearing the black and yellow strip here, and the Al-Qassam, the armed wing of Hamas, they're wearing the green ones too. Okay. Massive show, you know, a good campaign that they've done to kind of show everything. And it's frustration, Israel, they don't know how to spin it. I mean, even their foreign tabloids, you know, the garbage media in Europe and the United States, they know they're out of anything to kind of try and, you know, spend propaganda. It's like, what? Some mainstream media or all sorts of garbage. My goodness, man. But these videos spoke louder than, you know, all of the garbage. And I mean, you know, they've been exposed for the past 15 months, but these images today are exposing them even more. And in Israel, they're just frustrated, to say the least. Israeli media saying, this is a humiliation to us and to our army and to the people. The people are saying, what have we been doing there for 15 months? How comes these people are out there and so strong? And they don't know where to start. Defeated, completely defeated, demoralized. They lost all faith in the political and military leadership. That's the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about. And the second thing that I wanted to talk to you about, yesterday there was a new program from Al Jazeera called وَمَا خَفِيَ أَعْظَمْ in Arabic. And, you know, what hasn't been revealed is greater. During which they showed images that were exclusive, released for the first time from Al-Qassam Brigades, including interviews with the commander-in-chief of Al-Qassam Brigades and one of the senior figures in Hamas. So MahmoodOD is the commander-in-chief. One is called Izzuddin al-Haddad, one of the most significant figures, and the other one is none other than Yahya Sinwar. During which they stated several things. Reasons behind Al-Aqsa, things that are being revealed for the first time ever. How they infiltrated Unit 8200 and several other intelligence agencies and found out a campaign being prepared from Gaza that the Israeli cabinet and top figures approved about 6 days before the 7th of October that was due to take place in Gaza after the holidays. How MahmoodOD was in charge and alive and kicking and standing and moving. How the Israeli army, after Hamas's initial infiltration and them taking down the Gaza division, invading dozens of bases, taking down the whole of the Gaza division and imprisoning, taking into captivity one of the commanders in the Gaza division, the commander of the Southern Brigade, if I'm not mistaken, the Gaza division, alongside senior figures too. How many of the soldiers fled to the Israeli kibbutzes, which also led Hamas to go to some of the Israeli kibbutzes. And then later they revealed information that we already know and spoke about, which is the Israeli massacres on the 7th of October. The strikes on Kibbutz Be'eri, on Nir Oz, the Hannibal Directive that was implemented on the 7th of October against the Israeli civilians, that Israel later blamed the Palestinian side with, and that the abhorrent mainstream media and abhorrent politicians and some global leaders accepted as a fact. The first image that I wanted to share with you from yesterday, of course we can't share the video here, is this image. This is MahmoodOD. This is the man who began the 7th of October. Walking, talking, speaking, guiding, everything is normal. Israel said they killed him several times. Clearly, he's still there. Second image is of this man. We saw him martyred and we saw him fighting to the last breath, but these were also images of Yahya Sinwar the Hamas leader inside of Gaza, who led the political wing of Hamas in Gaza, were fighting. He decided to fight in Gaza, moving from one place to another. And in one of the images, he was overseeing an Israeli APC that was destroyed in Tel Sultan in the Rafah area in Gaza, giving speeches over there, having these what's it called, literature, freedom, the door of freedom will be opened, right, with the blood of people, and sacrifice is not in vain, things like that. But that he was fighting for a very long time before Israel assassinated him. That's something very important, because in Israel, they accidentally killed him. All the time, Israel was saying, oh, he's hiding in the tunnels surrounded by our hostages so that we don't target them, as if they didn't target them and killed a third of them and massacred them on the 7th of October in the Nova Festival. He was actually fighting them. The man was fighting them, and for a very long time, probably killing many of them too. The second important thing is, well, look at this image from him inside of Gaza. This was him with another senior figure in Al-Qassam brigades in a house in the Rafah area with Hebrew writing on the wall. What does the Hebrew writing on the wall mean? Well, this says Tzafon Ma'arav, Tzafon North, Ma'arav West. But this means that Israeli forces were in this house. Imagine the failure. Imagine the grave failure of this paper tiger, of this depraved TikTok army. This man is standing or planning here with a colleague of his in a place where Israeli forces were. And Israel all the time saying he's hiding in tunnels, he's surrounded, he's a coward, and he's this and that. He's over the ground next to you, following you inside of Gaza, debunking this whole lie and exposing this depraved TikTok army for what they are. The diaper army, the failed TikTok diaper army, incapable of doing anything but killing innocent women and children and destroying buildings. That's what they're good at. 70% of the 50,000 confirmed martyrs in Gaza, apart from the 14,000 missing, are women and children. Yahya Sinwar, on the other hand, he was fighting, he was following, he was monitoring them inside of Gaza. This is a massive blow for Israel. The second thing that I wanted to talk to you about this video from yesterday is a man called Izzuddin al-Haddad. Izzuddin al-Haddad is again a senior figure in the armed wing of Hamas, who said a couple of important things. He said the Israeli cabinet met before October the 7th to plan an enormous attack on Gaza. We had a preemptive strike on October the 7th, although we prepared for it for years. We invaded the Israeli intelligence and we found out their weaknesses. That's why we had a lot of success on the 7th of October. How many of the Israeli soldiers in the Gaza divisions were fleeing to the kibbutzes in Israel, and how in the kibbutzes they had armed people fighting them too. So even those who Israel massacred, and they called civilians, right, inside of Israel, they were armed people too. And how, of course, again, Israel massacred its own people on October the 7th. This is something new. We've heard reports of Hamas, or certain claims that it might have been a preemptive strike. This is a direct confirmation. The initial statements that came from Hamas about the 7th of October is the general situation when it comes to Palestine, in particular the prisoners. They've been trying to reach a prisoner exchange with Israel for 10 years with no success. And immediately after they started the 7th of October, they said we were willing to reach an agreement now and stop our actions. And then there were talks about preparations to do with Al-Aqsa Mosque. But now more information is being revealed about this plan from Israel with cabinet meetings inside of Israel, and also the Palestinian resistance finding out that something was prepared for them. And then they had to go on this attack as well, a preemptive attack on Israel. And these were the main things that I want to share with you in this live stream. And now I'll open the space up for the community for your participation, to share your views, thoughts, or any questions as well, of course. And thank you so much for everyone who's tuning in. Let's see who we have with us today. Okay, and if anyone has any questions, by the way, for me, if you wouldn't mind highlighting them with like a red circle or something. Faria Hussein, hi Mahmoud. Firstly, thank you for your clear reporting for the past 15 months. My pleasure. Thank you. How do you think Hamas will confront Israel in the West Bank? In the West Bank, it's a little bit more complicated than summarizing it in Hamas, because there's a united resistance front in Jenin in particular. Jenin, it created quite a special situation in the West Bank where many armed resistance groups are fighting under one umbrella, which is the Jenin Brigade. So armed wings of Fatah, of Hamas, of the PIJ. And they're doing this very effectively. They're surprising Israel, they're surprising other people too. So it's not just a Hamas strategy, because also Hamas doesn't have the same capabilities that they do in Gaza. Gaza was liberated. Gaza, Israeli forces were not present, but they were still choking Gaza, imposing a blockade on them. But they didn't have presence internally. And Hamas cleansed Gaza from traitors and agents, and that's why they managed to carry out this campaign effectively against Israel. Whereas the West Bank, you have a traitor authority, the Abu Mazen authority, working against the Palestinian people. But what I can tell you for sure is that nothing would stop. What Israel is doing in the West Bank is theater, by the way. They know they're not going to be successful, but they are a bloodthirsty nation. They're a bloodthirsty nation who have been planted there by Western powers to wreak havoc and terror in Palestine. And they're doing that job, and that's why they're protected by their Western patrons, primarily the United States of America. But the Palestinian people will never give up until they uproot this cancerous Zionism from the land of Palestine. The land of Palestine belongs to the indigenous people of Palestine. It doesn't belong to these invaders who impose their will on the people. Poor people at the time in Palestine, they welcomed them. Oh, come, you're fleeing the war, you're fleeing this and that. And they were using all of this victimhood and all of the Holocaust stuff. Oh yeah, come on. All of a sudden they flipped against the people who took them in and started expelling them from their homes and stealing their lands. Nakba, Naksa, and now they were proud. They were doing the 2023 genocide, 2024 genocide. The Gaza Nakba, they were calling it proudly. So it's not going to work, but Israel's trying to buy time with that. Benjamin Netanyahu's trying to buy time, and he's trying to also please Bezalel Smotrich, so that Smotrich can at least reassure his base, because the majority of his base are based in the West Bank. There's religious Zionism. He can tell them, look, I agreed to this first phase of the war, and I didn't resign like Ben Gvir did, but I'm still a patriot. I'm still a bloodthirsty child murderer. So look, we're killing children in the West Bank too. We're still attacking hospitals. So there you have it, my beloved followers. The slaughter of children is still ongoing. That's what they're doing. But apart from that, what are they going to achieve? Nothing. They're not going to achieve anything politically. Is there anything politically to achieve? Was there any political achievement after 15 months of full-blown genocide in Gaza? No. No. You're dealing with valiant people resisting you. You can't defeat them. So it's going to be a failure in the West Bank too. But Benjamin Netanyahu is basically dragging, having this show and, a nice theater for the base. Look, we're still killing Palestinians. That's the main thing, really. Let's go to your next question. Texas Mama, whose vehicles are those? Those vehicles were Hamas vehicles in the videos that I shared. I'm assuming you were referring to them. And welcome everyone. Thank you all. Like I said, if you wouldn't mind any comments, just highlighting them, because otherwise they will be missed with the levels of comments. Blank stares, I'm gonna highlight your comment because I know it's not a question, it's a comment, but I want to elaborate on that. You said Sinwar was born in Khan Yunis refugee camp in Egyptian occupied Gaza in 1962 to a family who had been expelled or fled from Majd al-Asqar in 1948 Palestine war. All of the resistance leaders inside of Gaza and the resistance soldiers inside of Gaza come from families of victims, either descendants of those who survived the Nakba in 1948 and were expelled from their homes and believe that they are temporarily living in Gaza up until they go back to the land that Israel occupied from them illegally in 1948. And 80% have lost parents, like orphans, many of them, Palestinians. What are we talking about? You've seen this genocide in the past 15 months. Those who saw what this depraved diaper army was doing for them in the past 15 months and to their families, and the slaughter, the merciless, barbaric, Western-backed slaughter of the people of Gaza, they know who they're dealing with. They're going to grow up to want to resist these people. So that's where the resistance comes from, right? It's an antidote to the cancerous Zionism that needs to be uprooted. And thank you for mentioning that, because I think many people are very ignorant to these things. So thank you so much. That was from Blank Stares. And Chihuahua and Melissa, thank you so much for your contribution. And let's go to your next questions. Stephen Kelly, the Hamas is going to the West Bank. There have been suspicions that they do. If they do, then they would reach the southern part of the West Bank. But that's, again, an assumption. There has been no proof of that. There were previous suspicions that some tunnels used to reach Al-Khalil or Hebron. With the peace talks that used to happen between the Arafat government at the time and Israel, one of the plans, because Israel did not want to give the Palestinians at the time a land route from Gaza to the West Bank. They were thinking of having a tunnel to the West Bank. But that could be something that they have, and we don't know. But because what we do know is that Hamas has tunnels to Israel. Hamas has tunnels to Israel. Marvin Vergas, question, you think Trump looking for 600 billion investment will help Palestine get a state? Beats 100 mil from Adelson. You're right, it beats 100 million from Miriam Adelson, the Zionist who gave him 100 million. But I think when we want to look at Trump and Saudi Arabia, I think many people would, undermine to a very large extent what Saudi Arabia wants in return. Although there have been many leaks of the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia saying that I don't personally care about Palestine, technically they haven't been supportive that much. Of course, aid, yeah, and many countries send aid, absolutely. But from an awareness level, from their media arms, they have been poisoning people's minds when it comes to Palestine and its resistance. Now, saying all of that, they haven't had a peace treaty with Israel yet, have they? Israel is seeking a peace treaty with Saudi Arabia, not the other way. That's what people need to understand. Israel is begging recognition from Saudi Arabia and other Arab states. Why? Because they know they are a thief, fake state, and they want recognition. A thief and a fake entity. The biggest thing that they need from their surrounding, indigenous surrounding, is recognition. So if the indigenous people of the area surrounding us recognize our existence, then all of a sudden we'll become valid. I mean, we stole the land, we faked the identity, we faked the thing, we stole their food, we stole everything. Now it's time for the others to recognize us. But Saudi Arabia is not in a hurry. Saudi Arabia remembers that in 2000 they had a peace proposal for Israel at the time. Ariel Sharon, the Israeli prime minister, they told him, here's a peace proposal, Mr. Sharon. Most Arab and Muslim states will recognize Israel, but just give the Palestinians a state. Sharon held the paper and tore it apart and threw it in the bin. Now, Biden had an offer on the table for Benjamin Netanyahu back in April. He said, I have a golden offer for you, peace treaty with Saudi Arabia, but you need to give the Palestinians a state. Netanyahu again, no. Why no? They can't recognize their victim. Benjamin Milikovsky, who his father changed his name to Ben Netanyahu, surname. Bezalel Smotrich, in reference to a town in Ukraine. These foreign things that came to Palestine and formed this fake state with a fake nationality, with a pseudo history and pseudo narrative, they can't recognize the victim. Who's the victim? The original Semitic Palestinian people who have been there, the descendants of the Canaanites. No one can cast doubt on their authenticity. However, the others' authenticity, well, it's clear as day. These fake people with fake names and fake nationalities coming from, creating this facade of a state. So Saudi Arabia is in no rush. There were reports that, listen, even if we reach a ceasefire, things de-escalate and there's a long-term kind of solution, we might have a peace treaty with Israel. Maybe. But what's for sure is the things that Israel was aiming to achieve by having what they label as the Abraham Accords, which is having access to the Arab world by stepping on the Palestinian cause, not through the Palestinian cause, that's not going to be achieved. Even if any other corrupt government wants to have a peace treaty with them. Because who's having peace treaties with them? The people? Of course not. Is the Saudi government going to have a referendum with the Saudi people? Would you like us to have a recognition and have a peace treaty with Israel? Of course not. Did Egypt or Jordan have a peace treaty with Israel after open referendums with the people? Did the people have these normal relations with Israel? No, they didn't. It's their governments. The governments that do not represent the people. So firstly, these governments, if they do have disagreements with Israel, they're not going to be representing their people. Secondly, they can dream on about burying the Palestinian cause. The Palestinian cause is going to be now their eternal nightmare up until their demise. The past 15 months woke up the whole world. Those who were blind, those who were asleep, those who were ignorant. It even woke the dead, right? But they're going to try that, and let's see. But what I can tell you for sure is what Israel's hoping to achieve through that, it's not going to achieve it. And the Saudis won't give it in that easily, by the way. But there have been reports. And again, some of them have been denied. Like there was some reports saying that Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman said, have a ceasefire, we'll have a peace treaty. Then the Saudis denied it. So don't forget, some things are, released as, test balloons for the public and, to see the response and what have you. Raya, Salam. How many hostages are left in Gaza? Well, there are about 90 left now. 89 to 90, something like that. Left in Gaza. late 80s. Okay, and then Palestinians, we have a significant number left. There are over altogether there were 10,000. And now there's over 9,500, 9,700. Because 200 were released this week, 100 last week, almost 100. And don't forget, Israel kidnapped more in the meantime. But the more time goes by, the bigger the prisoner swaps will be. So last week we saw 90, this week 200. In the coming weeks, we're going to see thousands being released. Altogether, 2,000 people, including how many? Approximately 700, I think, with life sentences. Don't take me for that, but several hundreds with heavy life sentences. Some of them were released today, by the way. Some of them went to Gaza, some of them went to West Bank, some of them went to Egypt too. Francis, I saw a picture of Hamas fighter said to be a woman. Do you think there are many women fighters? There are. There was a confirmation that they have a female unit, yeah. Now, I'm not sure. I'm not sure, really. Yvonne, Pollock, Mahmoud, fantastic explanation as always. Thank you. Question, will the occupation sabotage the ceasefire? Listen, Netanyahu is trying to always say Hamas is doing this, Hamas is doing that, although he's a blatant liar. And the Israelis are hyper-pathological liars. You need to understand that. But the big question is, will he challenge Trump? Because Trump did put pressure. He did put pressure through Witkoff. Let's not, underestimate that. That wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the Palestinian people and the Palestinian resistance and the supporting fronts. Of course not. But clearly, Trump did something that Netanyahu did not want and put Netanyahu in a very difficult place. Trump also said that we expect the second phase to move on, otherwise there will be consequences. He's threatening Israel, by the way, if you ask me. Witkoff is coming to Gaza to ensure the smooth operation and what have you. That's also something to apply pressure on Israel and recognize Hamas's legitimacy in Gaza directly from the United States too. Anything can happen. I'm leaning against Israel totally sabotaging and exiting and ruining everything. There's internal pressure, by the way. There is popular demand to end the war in Israel. The majority of the public don't want this anymore. The polls keep showing more and more people refusing a continuation, asking for an all-out deal. Even some people are resisting this deal. They're saying it's too slow. They're saying we want everyone for everyone already. Get us out of here. Netanyahu, you killed so many Israelis. You criminal, you liar. We hope you die. This is what the Israelis are telling Netanyahu. But again, your Western mainstream media is covering up everything. It's like worse than Israel's mainstream media, Western mainstream media. People in Israel, those who oppose Netanyahu, they hate him more than they hate anything on earth. Whenever something happens, an accident happens, say, I wish Netanyahu was there. So don't forget that. Don't forget that. So it's not like he has public support for it. And we thanked Ichiwawa and Melissa. Thank you so much. IG to me, Barakallah Fik, Mahmoud Fik, Habibi. Angela Johnson as well. Stella Styla, thank you. And Halaka Debtera as well. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. Let's go to the next one. Christopher Kelly, we have to take notice of the many levels of Sinwar's planet's brilliance. That being said, do you think there is a planned attack if and when Israel folds the ceasefire? One of the things that we haven't spoken about is the fact that there is a looming Iranian response. apart from the 7th of October, which was the biggest attack on Israel in its history. Israel never faced anything like that before. There was two attacks from Iran. The second of attack from Iran on Israel was the most effective missile attack on Israel in history. Not to underestimate any other missile attacks, by the way. Hamas on the 7th of October, they launched 5,000 missiles on Israel in 30 minutes. On Nevatim, on 5 air bases, on other military bases, 5,000 half an hour. Saying that, those 5,000 missiles, they didn't weigh as much as a hypersonic from Iran. They landed 200. All of them, almost every single one of them, landed on the child killers' bases. So that's looming over the heads of the killers and murderers in Israel. And now Iran is prepared. Iran, they have this strategic agreement with Russia. It doesn't outright say a defense pact, but hey, well, they've been already coordinating militarily, haven't they? They have the protection. They have the coordination. They have the backing of Russia and China. They are probably the biggest player in West Asia, Iran. What do they want Iran to attack them? Trust me, the whole world will be cheering Iran. You'll be seeing Iranian flags in Trafalgar Square and in New York Times Square, New York, whatever it is, yeah. Everywhere, Washington, and you'll see people supporting, cheering Iran, because many people wanted them to attack this genocide, child-killing entity a long time ago. But that's something they consider. Don't forget that. Also, do they want to open the other front of Ansarullah again? Do they want that? Ansarullah stopped attacking them. Can they handle them? Can the US handle them? Can the genocide cartel handle them, led by the United States and the United Kingdom? I'm not sure. I'm not sure they want that. Ansarullah expelled 3 US aircraft carriers. Ansarullah, Yemen, expelled the world's biggest superpowers US aircraft carriers. Saying it's an accomplishment is an understatement. And listen to the final joke, to the recent joke. The Trump administration labels them as a terrorist organization. What kind of a joke is that? That's a badge of honor for them. The biggest terror state on earth telling someone you're a terrorist. What kind of a joke is this? Do you think people still buy these jokes? What do you think they're going to affect them financially? Everyone has a backdoor to your financial embargoes and these stupidities. You're only proving yourself to be a criminal fool, supporting a genocidal entity and showing us that you're morally bankrupt, totally morally depraved. So it's not going to happen. I don't think they want to, break the ceasefire, because if they do, there's a lot to pay. And guess what? No one will be blaming the sides who will be attacking Israel. Israel gave enough reasons for the entire world to go and annihilate its regime and dismantle it as an entity. The only reason that they haven't done that is because they have enough backing from depraved Western governments who support slaughter and supremacy and Jewish supremacy and apartheid in Palestine. That's why. So is anyone going to criticize Iran if they attack them tomorrow? No, they say, well done, Iran, and cheer them, like I said, in the streets. And Netanyahu would be the one to blame. No one else. Only Benjamin Netanyahu. The Israelis will blame Netanyahu, and everyone else will only be blaming Benjamin Netanyahu. Abraham Zarati, what do you think will happen to the Palestinian Authority after what happened in Jenin? The Palestinian Authority is tied with the occupation. The existence of the Palestinian Authority is tied with the existence of the occupation. They are an authority, and I mean the Palestinian Authority of the West Bank led by Abu Mazen Mahmoud Abbas. They're there to serve them. Without occupation, they don't exist. They don't represent anyone in Palestine. They haven't been elected. The only democratic elections we had in Palestine were the elections of 2006 when Hamas won by a landslide. And hey, gay presto, whoa, 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 the whole world goes against them. The US, the UK, oh no, they won. It doesn't matter if it's democratic, but they won. We don't want them. But this dictator who licks the boots of the Zionists every day and every night, he's there. He does not represent the people, but he's heavily funded. I mean, the forces around him, the Israeli Shabak protects him. What do we think? He's Israel's man in the West Bank. Saying that he doesn't have long left, whether he will die of natural causes or, I don't know, someone has a thing, something. And also, Marvin Vergas and Studio Rainer and Just Pudding, thank you. Marvin Vergas said, besides Russia agreement, Iran sign with who next? They haven't declared any kind of strategic agreement with another country, but they do have something that was very similar to what they did with Russia already with China. That hasn't been reported that much, by the way. And Iran already said, Masoud Pezeshkian, the Iranian president, said that China is our biggest ally. So, and China is the biggest oil consumer of Iran. Let no one think that, you know, the US or Israel or anyone dreaming of attacking Iran will be like, won't be faced with the wrath of China and Russia. You know, they'll be surprised. Studio Rainer, do you think Israel is being destroyed from within intentionally? How do you put an end to a nuclear power without civil war? I think Israel is destroyed from within. It's destroying itself. It's eating itself up. Intentionally, it's funny that you say that. Some observers in Israel, and I'm talking about profound Zionists and, you know, writers and columnists, some of them described Benjamin Netanyahu as Israel's biggest enemy planted inside of Israel to destroy it from within. More than one person said that. That Benjamin Netanyahu is a planted American agent inside of Israel to destroy it from within. And then you said, how do you put an end to a nuclear power without a civil war? We had an end to nuclear powers without civil wars. I mean, without like, there were like tensions, of course, but, you know, total destruction, whatever. It can happen. It can happen. Because when it comes to nuclear weapons, there are layers of protection. It's not like there's one person who can click a nuclear button and, hey, presto, we have a nuclear bomb in World War III and IV. It doesn't work like that. It used to be easier to have access to like, or have mistakes. Like in the 50s or 60s, we were on the verge of nuclear catastrophes, especially from the United States, by the way. The United States, some pilots at some points in history, they made tragic mistakes that could have led to World War III. Thankfully, it didn't happen. So, I mean, I'm saying thankfully it didn't happen, but I don't know what would have happened if there was a nuclear war. So, but anyway, you know what I mean. It can happen. It can happen, and there are layers of protection. Just putting saying an extension of British colonization, almost like a weird social experiment setup. Yeah, absolutely. That's why the British colonization and British establishment is still supporting this genocide shamelessly. Shamelessly, such an abhorrent system, such an abhorrent establishment, abhorrent prime minister, so ugly and despicable. Look at your history. Your king is going to ex-colonies apologizing for your racist, white supremacist history in other countries too, and you're still supporting a genocidal entity against the Palestinian people. You blind hypocrites. Wake up. Wake up, get your heads out from the sand. And they're trying their best to save this Oh, we're not sure. No, we disagree with the concept of this is not a genocide. And, did Hamas lead this, as if history started on the 7th of October, right? So it absolutely is. But guess what? If they don't want to have review, they decide to remain on the wrong side of history, the British establishment, that will be a constant kundara, as we say in Arabic, a shoe on their head for the rest of history, right? Even if they deny, because listen, I'll tell you what's going to happen. Israel will be dismantled and Palestine will be liberated. And the people who supported Israel will act like they never supported it. And guess what they're going to say? They're going to say, oh my God, I'm so happy that this happened. Oh no, they were so bad. They were so evil. When the narrative changes, the weak, the hypocrites, right? But again, with or without them, things will be changing. Let's not forget that. Marvin, again, you think Egypt will enter into a conflict with Israel? Egypt gets U.S. money. You think more U.S. money will protect the Zionist master? They must know their target for the Greater Israel Project. Yes. Egypt, as a country, they know that their biggest enemy in the region is Israel. Why? Because Israel occupied a large chunk of Egypt. Israel occupied the Sinai Peninsula, and when they occupied the Sinai Peninsula, they said, we're never leaving. And if you want to go by this whole Jewish fairy tale that they're saying when it comes to Zionism, about the Zionism and the land of the holy Jewish people, where Sinai is the most important place for Jewish people. 10 Commandments and Sinai and Moses, isn't that important? But they started to act like it's not important when they had to withdraw, when Egypt fought them bravely back and expelled them from Sinai. So they know that Israel's their main enemy. But of course, they went to this peace treaty with the United States, several agreements, although in Israeli words, Egypt breached all of the lines of the Camp David Accords by having so much presence inside of Sinai. And recently there was an interview with one of the senior figures in the Egyptian army. He was asked, how comes do you have so much presence inside of Sinai? Since my land and I'm free, I'm at liberty to do whatever I want in my land. No regard whatsoever for Israel. Of course, Egypt, like other Arab countries too, are criticized, and rightfully so, for not doing enough to prevent the genocide in Gaza. However, Egypt didn't take positions that broke the hopes of the ethnic cleansing campaign by refusing the Israeli, American, and European pressure to expel the population. In the early days of the genocide, Western leaders were back and forth in Egypt to apply pressure on them to open the borders and expel the whole Palestinian people and get it over and done with, and for Israel to build settlements inside of Gaza. Egypt refused. Egypt was offered tens of billions of dollars to do that. And some reports said they were offered that debts would be lifted. They refused. That's something for Egypt. Again, that's not to say you condone the Egyptian government or you condone, no, that's facts for you. Do they know that there's something? Yeah, of course they know. The president himself of Egypt said, if we accept all of the Palestinians, they won't stop fighting Israel. They'll start fighting Israel from Sinai. Israel will use that as a pretext to attack them, and we will be the ones who will ultimately be responsible. Therefore, a massive attack will be justified against all of us. And guess what? Will they have a problem in nuking Cairo? No, they won't have a problem. Do we think they have any morals? They don't have any morals. Israel, the United States administration, the British government, they have no morals whatsoever. These people are soulless, morally, completely done. So they will. And from their perspective, hey, we'll control the Suez Canal as well and everything and all of that. So there is that. But is Israel in a state to threaten anyone? Israel failed with Gaza. A very small piece of land with very great people, with a very great secret too. Israel is on its way to oblivion. It's only a matter of time. And also, Studio, again, thank you so much. You said, if you look at Israel's history to the Bronze Age, there was a state of state betraying each other constantly. Is that not proof that they're the same people? History is repeating itself as if it's identical. The Israeli kingdoms and the Hellenistic period and the Hellenizing Jews and non-Hellenizing Jews, and following that too, some of them used to consider other Jews as completely heretic, right? What they did was heresy. We had that in history, yeah, but I mean, what's happening is something that can happen with other people, and regardless of their ancestry or whatever it is, certain things that are happening that are led by greed or racism or ignorance or all of that, it can happen anywhere. And I don't necessarily think it's proof they're the same people, but they do have attributes of some people in the past, undoubtedly. And Ebrima Jallo, thank you so much, my friend. And everyone else participating and for your kind comments. Of course, sorry, I'm not able to reach all of them, but we'll still take some of the highlighted questions. Mind over matter. Mahmoud, do you think will happen this weekend regarding the ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel? From what I read with Hezbollah, I think that Hezbollah will give an opportunity and a window for an extension of the ceasefire, unless they surprise us tomorrow or the day after. Saying that, Iran just had military drills in the Strait of Hormuz. The IRGC was having military drills in the Strait of Hormuz. Who's that message for? That message is for the United States. What did they do? They asked Western ships to take a certain route. They were dictating who moves where in the Strait of Hormuz. Is that a signal from Iran? Yes, it's a signal from Iran that we're here. And there's a looming threat. Don't test us. So far, that looming threat led to results. A ceasefire in Lebanon and a ceasefire in Gaza. Say what you like. Iran achieved what they wanted without having True Promise 3 yet. But it's still open. And people need to understand that. That's so will they give them another for several weeks for the sake of not having? Could be. And they don't mind being criticized, by the way. They don't have a problem in being criticized, so long as they achieve their objectives eventually, because that's the whole purpose of it. Because Iran is not like Israel. Listen, Israel kills aimlessly. They're there just to kill. They're so stupid. No strategy, no nothing whatsoever. They've landed 100,000 tons of bombs on Gaza, over 3 times the size of the equivalent of what was landed on Hiroshima and Nagasaki by the U.S. genocidal maniacs at the time, without achieving any of their objectives, any of them. But Iran, with their strategic calculations, horizontal view, peripheral vision, they're getting results. They're getting results. Even their response to Syria is a direct indication and admission from them that we made a mistake before and we're reviewing our position. There was hesitation from Iran before of whether we support or not this Bashar al-Assad. Ahmadinejad used to call him an Arab dictator. But in 2013, they decided to go in. Although there was a split in Iran, do we support this man or not? We need to be on the side of the people. Now, they saw the changes that are happening in Syria, and they said, we'll change our position too. Shows you Iranian thinking and dynamics and how things shift. Saying that, they still get their objectives. And they don't mind playing in the long term, points. Right? Zarif the other day said, we need to understand very well, we don't win by the knockout, we win by points in the long term. This is how they view it. Very, very strategic thinking. That's proper strategic thinking. Incomparable to Israeli strategic thinking, by the way. The Israelis are imbeciles next to Iran. Incomparable. Let's go to your Stephen Kelly. Will caravans be delivered? Yeah, it was reported that caravans will be delivered in temporary tents. But my God, man, these people are so amazing in Gaza. I've seen some people already working on refurbishing their houses. They're like taking down the rubble, making cement out of the rubble after crushing it very thoroughly, and internal tents inside the houses that Israel destroyed. You know, that love of life. It's so amazing. And you know, one thing people need to understand, if Israel decides to do anything again with Gaza, the people are already bulletproof. They already know we lost everything. Materially, we lost everything. We faced hunger, starvation, the loss of our loved ones, the loss of our houses, property, money, of our offices, hopes, dreams, works, things we like or we love, let alone lost a part of our body or something. These people are unbeatable. So, and it's amazing. I'm telling you, people going back to North Gaza. Glenn Huxley is saying the Israeli refugees from the Holocaust are given a place and land, and then they turn around and commit a Holocaust on the roasts. That's so true. Oh my God, that is so true. How? Putrid and low. That is absolutely true. It's fascinating, isn't it? Saying that, of course, many Holocaust survivors absolutely reject this genocide state and speak up against it and criticize the Israeli use of this victimhood of the Holocaust. But to a large extent, you are right. Many of them did do that. And the ironic thing of today is, firstly, more and more Jews are aware of that fact and are sick of it too. They're sick of this victimization thing. Like I said the other day, the poll that I spoke about, 2/3 of Jewish people in the US supporting Hamas. And some of them, the Zionists, because what did Zionism do? Zionism capitalized on this victimhood thing, inflation of numbers, everything you want to say, to go and steal people's land. They still do it to this day. Some people who speak about the Holocaust today sympathize with the Holocaust they haven't seen and ignore a genocide happening in front of their eyes. Someone explain to me, how can that happen? There's something wrong. But again, things are changing. Faria is saying, why is Abbas known as Abu Mazen? Because he has a son called Mazen. And the Arabs usually, if you name, if you have a son, they'll call the father of that son in Arabic. Can you give me a quick history on how the PA became such a collaborator organization? Yes, very briefly. I mean, firstly, the PLO, established in the 60s, there were certain figures. It was an umbrella organization that really represented big chunks of Palestinian society with different ideological background. They even included the Muslim Brotherhood under their umbrella. Now, several prominent figures were, set aside with the PLO, with Yasser Arafat remaining. Now, some people had questions about Arafat from a very long time ago. saying that he led PLO to a very long time, up until the Oslo Accords. Oslo Accords made a massive split. People were already split, had slight splits and suspicions before, but the Oslo Accords made a split in his movement. How comes you're going for normalization with our occupier? Who committed the Nakba, who committed the Naksa, who did all of that? They said, give us time, peace path. Rabin is there, he wants peace, he wants to give us a state. Okay, let's give you time, Mr. Arafat, then. 1, 2, 3, 4 years down the line, your peace partner was killed by Israel. Netanyahu came. Netanyahu doesn't want peace. Early 2000s, towards the end of his life, and he was poisoned, and that says something. Arafat said, well, basically they fooled us in the Oslo Accords. Again, a claim that some people can buy, some people can't buy. It's like, if you were fooled, then you were a fool. Secondly, if one of your close aides poisoned you for the sake of Israel, then you didn't know how to choose people. Something must have been wrong with you. All of a sudden, who do we have? The big traitor, Mahmoud Abbas Abu Mazen. Some people blamed him for poisoning Arafat. Okay, what does Abu Mazen do? Abu Mazen comes and strips for Israel. He becomes a stripper for Zionism. Total bootlicker, doormat. And in the Arafat times, at least, well, the Palestinian Authority forces, they used to fight with the resistance sometimes. Of course, there were criticisms. Don't forget, there were things that have done that were wrong. But there was a bit different than today. Like today, like Abu Mazen, like I said, he's a stripper for Zionism. He's a bootlicker. Excuse me for the terminology, but this is a limit to how much, sold himself to the devil and went to these Annapolis talks with George Bush at the time and Ehud Olmert and saying these delusions and whatever, trying to have a coup against the democratically elected Hamas for the sake of Israel. But at the time, Al-Qassam brigades made the decisive move and took all of the traitors down. Then all of this time and no progress whatsoever. What are you doing, man? What are you doing? Constant refusals to have national unity that respects the concept of resistance against the occupation. This man is not genuine. This man doesn't have the interests of the Palestinian people in his heart. Hamas reached out for him so many times. Doesn't work with him. Why? Because he is tied with the occupation. That's it. Some people are blind. That's it. Yet despite that, still trying to reach out for him. By the way, the people who said that he and his authority are the main cause for the lack of a united front between all of the Palestinian factions are not members of Hamas. They were members of the PFLP. One of them is called Maher al-Tahir. He's a senior representative of the PFLP in Lebanon. He was talking about the meetings that they had in Russia, when Russia tried to kind of gather them together, and China too. But when you have two such opposing campaigns, like you can't mix, darkness with light. What can you do? Are there any Russian speakers here? Irene is asking. Vladimir Putin was in the chat. Vladimir Putin with his photo. President Putin was here. Angela Johnson, thank you so much. Let's see. Mind over matter. Do you think Israel and Turkey might go to war in the near future? I think Israel and Turkey are not in great terms. Turkey, they said they cut ties with Israel. but they still supplied them with stuff. And they still, well, there was a report that an Israeli warship was in Turkey after Turkey declared they cut ties with them. But they're not in the greatest of terms. This stage of not at the greatest of terms wasn't very relevant before the changes in Syria, because there was no geographical border between the two. And there was a very unlikely occurrence, that Turkey would somehow do something against Israel without being provoked or attacked by Israel directly. Saying that, Turkey, although a member of NATO, is not like the NATO to the T. Turkey has a problem with many NATO members. Turkey was constantly rejected by the EU because it's a Muslim country. Turkey was criticized by the NATO for its also connections with Russia and with Iran too. They have their own kind of position. Now, when things changed in Syria, things became more problematic. Why? Because for the first time, the Israelis and the Turks are at a battleground together. Israel's in the south. They still occupy parts of South Syria. Turkey is in the north. Turkey's presence and influence in Syria is far greater than Israel. What Israel is doing in Syria is just a show to try and intimidate. They're fighting no one. And even though they try to instigate problems, the current government said, we're not interested in a war. We know our limits. If they say we are interested in a war and we're going to come and kill you, they'll give Israel all of the excuse to destroy everything and go and control Damascus. The new government is saying we don't want trouble with anyone. We don't want war. We want to build our country and we want to have strategic relations with everyone. And please go back to the 1974. And guess what? There are diplomatic actions being taken and applying pressure on Israel. And we're seeing Israel withdrawing from parts of Lebanon, from parts of Gaza. But Israel wants to have this show. However, this show is taken seriously by who? By the biggest backer of Syria, Turkey. Turkish presence in Syria with this man who was once Al-Qaeda member and long beard with a jihadi look, who went from Al-Julan to Al-Shara. Despite the genuine changes in Israel, they're still traumatized that look before. The fact that he was talking about Jerusalem and how the Palestinian intifada motivated him, they have a problem with that. So they're not buying this new Ashara look. To them, it's a jihadist gang of thugs that's supported by Turkey. There were militant statements from both countries. Israel, not just militant statements, by the way, active preparations. Israel had a committee in the Knesset saying that we need to prepare for war with Turkey, and there were reassessments at the top levels of Israel's military and political levels to reassess the Turkish threat to them altogether. Because the Turkish threat goes, Israel assesses the threats from multiple countries. Turkey had a certain level. They already reassessed them. And Israel, they're preparing for a war with Turkey. However, from the moment of this talk, right, about something in the future, to that moment itself happening, there's a very long way. And the Turks are experts when it comes to negotiating things and escalating and de-escalating. And when it comes to Syria, Israel would need the United States. Israel cannot act on its own in Syria. Therefore, dream on. What are the new government doing? They made Qasd, SDF, agree to being part of the army, and now they're only talking about whether they come as part of the army with special perks, basically, or just under the command. And the defense minister of Syria saying, no, under the command, and it's Syria for all, please, and everyone under one umbrella, no difference between any of us, and this belongs to all of us. Okay. If they manage to do that, then they pulled the rug from underneath the American occupation in Syria. And when I say American occupation, they occupy certain oil fields, right? Okay. You take the Americans out, who is Israel going to be left with? Does anyone love Israel? Tell me. No one loves them. Okay. What happens? Trump is not interested. Trump pulled troops out of Syria during his term. Trump this time said, Erdogan, I like this guy very much. He's a very smart move. It was an unfriendly act, but, you know, no, he's not showing willingness to remain in Syria. And don't forget, he's promising to be, he made his aim to be remembered as the peacemaker. Okay. Who's Israel going to rely on? No one. If they don't have the US backing them in Syria, they can dream on. If the people of Syria starts throwing stones at them, they'll expel them. So there's a long way, and we're still in the early days of Syria too. Things are changing rapidly, though. I mean, the negotiations, and even with the South as well, there were, you know, certain moves, some remnants of the old regime. All of it is being dealt with and moving on. And I mean, what we would love to see for Syria ultimately is for the people to, you know, build a country that really represents them and move on from that era of bloody war. You know, over 1 million of Syrians were killed, over 10 million refugees, destroyed cities and towns altogether. You had a regime that was controlling everything and using all of the country's resources to protect itself. So now they need to have a state that really serves them, and people that serve them, not who go and all of a sudden wage this war in Israel that they can't win, really. They have no chance of winning. Now, will Israel impose something despite the fact that these changes are happening? They would need broad support. To counter that, the Syrian government is, well, they're making relations with all countries in the world. They're inviting the EU, they're dealing with Saudi Arabia, dealing with Lebanon. Previous government had problems with Lebanon. Everyone. So, and they're saying also, even with Iran, who used to fight us here, so long as they stay out of our internal business, willing to have strategic ties with them. They're not giving Israel reasons to, if that makes sense. Plus, Israel is in a very difficult position anyway. Saying that, by the way, even when Israel is in a difficult position, they can still recruit support. They can still recruit support. Now, look at Gaza, because look at Gaza. I mean, what if is everyone in the Western governments blind? They still support them. But again, you know, in Syria, they're trying to, you know, give an image of, you know, no problems with anyone. We want to build our country. But both Israel and Turkey know each other, and they know that they have capabilities. And from the way Israel sees it, Israel looks at the military capabilities of Turkey too. They're looking at a country that manufactures advanced weapons. They are a force to be reckoned with. Sahir, will Hamas become more advanced with better weapons and intelligence? What could be the future plan? Listen, they've always been preparing and improving. It's been a scale up for the Palestinian resistance, by the way, always going up in terms of advancement capabilities, even from 10 years back. Intel, infiltration of their enemy. They're building everything when it comes to weapons, from the bullet to the bomb to the side bomb to the dozens of types of bombs that they have with different uses, to the Yasin 105 to the Al-Ghul sniper. Very, very self-sufficient. But I mean, they will continue to prepare to liberate all of Palestine, by the way. And even if we have a ceasefire or some sort of an agreement for several years to come, Israel will know that these people won't stop until they get their rights. And we also had Golden Sun as well, Studio Rainer and Marvin, thank you. Danielle, Sophia, and Studio Rainer again, thank all of you. And hello to everyone in Michigan. Studio said, if Netanyahu dies, do you think Israel will turn to Iran for leadership? All the US is going to do is use them to profit the MIC, military industrial complex. All Israelis are a threat to everyone without denazification. Yeah, Israel does need denazification, but let's be frank here. This Nazi neo-fascist entity is there because of Western support. Let's be completely open about that. Without the US, without some of the European countries supporting them, they wouldn't have been there. And I mean supporting their enterprise. There's a difference between supporting an enterprise and not going against it, which is another shameful act, by the way, especially a terror enterprise like Israel. So Israel will either end up in the short term taking Netanyahu down and trying to recover from what happened to it, or trying to constantly increase more and more up until an endless internal fire inferno takes the state down. Because they're on the way to go. That's undeniable. However, there are some who are interested in them being preserved, right? So the way I view it is, in the short term, the Israelis who oppose what the government has been doing, although they have support for Zionist enterprise on the land of Palestine, they would look at the most urgent thing to do, which is protect the ceasefire, try and get Netanyahu out of power as soon as possible. But in the meantime, so long as he is in power, use all pressure points possible to keep him in check. Now that Trump applied pressure on him, all of a sudden, those who were anti-Trump before in Israel started to say, thank you, Trump. Okay? And all of a sudden, the right wing in Israel is cursing Trump. He betrayed us. He's a liar. He's a hypocrite and this and that. Some of them are trying to whitewash what Trump's done by saying, oh, well, he removed sanctions. He's bringing us weapons and this and that. Okay, but he did force Netanyahu to stop the war. And it's not like the United States. Who do we think the United States administration? They're the biggest terror state on the world. All of the wars in the world, United States. So they're not all of a sudden going to be in an angelic state all of a sudden. But the people in Israel will want to try and keep a tab on Netanyahu as much as possible. They know there's an election in a year. But they don't want Netanyahu during this year to cause more problems. Because from their perspective, he caused so many problems so far. Netanyahu, what he's thinking is, how can I keep myself up until the next elections? How can I keep myself here up until the last elections? He's considered the dynamics internally, the dynamics externally, the ICC, all of that looming. What am I going to do? He wants to remain there up until 2026. And he wants to remain there to show that I can get into such mess and get out of such mess and go back to lead Israel, right? Or lead Israel up until this last term, because there are questions about later on. So that's what I think when it comes to that. And with regards to Iran, like I said, the Iranian leadership, they're clever. I mean, they are clever, and they clearly review. They change their minds. They They're strategic players. You think Palestinians will have their own Yad Vashem? I would never like to start doing anything to do with this victimhood thing, like what the Zionists do with this Yad Vashem and stuff, and crying and lamenting about the past. Okay, something happened, of course, remember that, but not like it's Zionism that milks the living daylight out of the Yad Vashem and Holocaust stuff, by the way. Don't think that Jews used to do that. People need to remember one thing. Jewish people after the Second World War in the 50s, early 50s, early 60s, between the 50s and 60s, they weren't milking the Holocaust that as much as they did afterwards. Okay, they capitalized on the Holocaust thing for Palestine. They weren't milking it the way they do now. They start to milk it more and more with the Zionist lobby in the United States, by the way, and with the US also viewing Israel as a bit of a more important thing than what we thought, because the US and Israel weren't in best terms. Don't forget the attack on the US ship from Israel. Don't forget that it was the United States who forced Israel, France, and England, the UK at the time, to stop the war against Egypt in the 50s in 1956. Things changed. When the US changed its mind, all of a sudden we started to have these important stories and Yad Vashem and the Holocaust, and let's cry 24/7. So we faced a genocide. Okay. No, of course, never forgive, never forget. Sure. But you move on in life. You don't continue to cry and lament about the past. I'm not a fan of that. And did we have another one here? Let me have a look. And Sophia, thank you. Studio Rainer said Erdogan is also a snake that also backstabbed everyone. Israel's only hope is to be ruled by the Persians. It's so ironic, it's funny. Listen, I mean, I think it's more about how it's ruled than by who it's ruled. No one would have a problem with the concept of a Jewish dictatorship if that dictatorship provided equal rights and yeah, you can argue or whatever, but no one would have that much of a big problem. If Israel was an authoritarian Jewish state, as in one man, one rule, okay, or a Jewish kingdom, and it was equal to everyone living within it, right? Regardless of how they were interpreting the religion, but everyone lived in peacefully, you wouldn't be in such a state. I think the problem is the content of the ruling, right? Well, what do you rule with? Not just by what you say you rule with. Okay? They say that they are a Jewish state. Well, if you're implementing Judaism by what you do, what a beautiful image about Judaism are you giving? Wow, what a lovely image. Firstly, breaching everything Judaism tells you about. Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, you shall not covet, and then committing a genocide and raping women and men, raping them to death, slaughtering children. Wow, amazing. Brian Dawson as well, thank you. He said, seeing those IDF female prisoners of war being released today, you wouldn't think they spent 15 months in captivity. No, you would think they spent 15 months in a spa. Kushti, sitting there, skin is glowing and well fed. Thank you, Al-Qassam, and thank you this and that. I'll wager the poor Palestinian captives were not treated well. No, they weren't, of course not. They were abused and they were beaten. And I spoke about the sexual harassment thing with the female Palestinian women who were released. Now, some of those men who were released today, they said we were beaten in many cases, you know. We hardly had food. Some of them were solitary confinement for 3-4 years from 2021. It wasn't good. It wasn't good. And it showed you the morality, the difference in morality, my friend. right? Big difference, very big difference. And thank you for that. That was from Brian Dawson. Thank you so much. Okay. Marvin, you're saying about Dr. Sophia, Abu Safia, Hussam Abu Safia. No information has been released, but some reports said that he was abused in prison. We hope to see him released soon. Israel raped a doctor to death. Before, this doctor was studying in Britain, in a university in Britain. Guess what? They haven't said a word about him. Israel killed, that's because we're speaking about doctors. Israel killed over 900 healthcare staff in Gaza. Do you know that? They killed over 200 journalists. They killed over 18,000 children. Important to remember these numbers. Bloomster, you're asking something interesting. Do you think the new law in Israel regarding the truth on October the 7th is related to the revelation you mentioned? 100%. 1,000,000%. Israel has an October the 7th denial law. Imagine how weak they are. Try and deny laws and dictate Orwellian state. That's, of course, because there is evidence condemning them of these attacks on the 7th of October. So if anyone says tomorrow, oh no, Israel actually killed its own people inside of Israel. Oh, hold on a second. The law says you cannot deny this. Like the law said in other countries, you cannot deny the Holocaust. Like the law said, you cannot deny this and that. How weak your argument must be for you to criminalize the opposing opinion. How weak. How weak is that? Also, how arrogant. Who the hell do you think you are? Who do you think you are telling people what to think? Secondly, what kind of terrorism is that? What kind of terrorism is that? Terrorism is the also use of non-physical force to try and impose your political or opinions on other people. That's called state-sponsored terror. Why do people not speak about that? Or are they too scared, too chicken? So yeah, of course, my friend. Faria are saying, what did the Zionists think and say when they saw the release of the Israeli prisoners of war? Their families were very happy. There was this room with the families of those IDF soldiers, female soldier prisoners of war, who were working in the Gaza division. Their families were there. They were very happy seeing the Palestinian fighters bring them out. The Israeli public was again in another shock, another reality check. All of a sudden, thousands of Palestinian fighters coming. Our prisoners of war who worked in the army were smiling, were well treated, were giving gifts, were thanking Al-Qassam brigades for such honorable treatment, for feeding them well, for giving them clothes. Speaks volumes, doesn't it? They were very frustrated. And what also hurt Israel as well is the fact that these images that I spoke about earlier in this live stream, the fact that the Palestinian resistance, they had weapons that they took from the Israeli elite units on the 7th of October, and all of these messages. But they're digesting it slowly. Some people already digested it a long time ago in Israel, but now, with these videos, with these images, you're forced to swallow the pill. Do you understand? And thank you everyone else for your participation and comments as well. And we'll wrap it up there, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in for another live stream. Thank you for your participation and very interesting questions. You know, I thought you'd have questions, want to clarify everything about the nights. Thank you for participating. Ichiwawa, Melissa Vatten, IG to me, Angela Johnson, Stella, Styla, Eliza, Halaka, Deptera, Marvin, Virga, Studio Rainers times several times, my friend, thank you. Just Pudding, Golden Sun, and Marvin again, thank you. And Daniel, Sophia, and Brian Dawson, thank you so much. And One Voice Voicing, welcome. And thank you for the membership. And everyone else, thank you so much for your comments, for your input, for your participation. Of course, I'm sorry that, of course, I haven't reached all of the comments, but we try and kind of reach as much as possible, especially if they're not highlighted, I don't really see them. Apart from that, have a relaxing evening, right? Rest of the day, night, or weekend, depending on where you are. If you wanted more live streams in the next few days, drop a comment to this video. Tell me I do want more live streams in the next couple of days, because I'm diversifying between videos and live streams too. And yeah, I'll be here. Stay blessed, everyone. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Have a relaxing day tomorrow. And I will see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone. Take care.